Is 7 p.m. on January 2nd, 2024. I'll call to order this meeting of the Bridgewater Town Council. The meeting is being aired live and recorded for future broadcast. I'd ask you to please join me in a salute to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The council has been made aware of the passing of one of Bridgewater's veterans, Robert L. Wood, at the age of 101, passed away on December 21st, 2023, at home surrounded by his family. Bob was born on October 20th, 1922, and was a lifelong resident of Bridgewater. Bob was a Navy veteran of World War II and served aboard the aircraft carrier USS Core in the Atlantic and Pacific theaters. I'd ask you to please join me for a moment of silence to honor Mr. Wood. Thank you. The first item of business is the approval of the meeting minutes from December 19th, 2023. I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
I will abstain, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda, announcements from the president. I have two announcements. The first is Happy New Year. Thank you all for coming. We're looking forward to an exciting 2024. The second is a little more tactical. The Town of Bridgewater aggregation plan is available for public review and comment until January 17th, 2024 at 4 p.m. If you're not familiar with this plan seeks to aggregate consumers in town to negotiate rates for power supply. Participation is voluntary and additional details are available on the town website or by contacting the town manager. That is the end of announcements from the president. We'll move on to agenda item C, proclamations. We have no proclamations. Agenda item D, citizen open forum. I would invite any member of the public who would like to address the council, please come to the podium. We ask that you introduce yourself with your name and address and keep your remarks to 3 minutes. Would anybody care to speak? Seeing nobody, I will close public comment. We'll move on to agenda item E, appointments. We have no appointments this evening. Move on to agenda item F, hearings. We have no hearings this evening. So we'll move ahead to agenda item G, license transactions. We do have a license transaction this evening. Petition P 2024-014, the annual licensing of Class 3 auto dealer. I would entertain a voice vote on this one.
The motion to approve.
Yep.
A second.
Second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to take item N, new business, out of order.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, we'll do this through voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. We'll take that item out of order. So that is item
J
J.
to J or
No, it was N.
N?
N,
N.
new business.
Yeah.
New business.
So we have item new business. This is the proposed zoning amendment ordinance D FY 24-004, Central Business District and Form-Based Code. I would invite Bob Ruley to the podium to introduce this.
As I shared with you at the December 5th meeting, we are making progress. Because I want to keep you always up to date. Today is day 359 of my tenure in Bridgewater. Closing in on a year. I think we're going to make it. So we have a special meeting of the CED subcommittee and the planning board in 10 days. The planning board has seen the draft of the proposed ordinance and form-based code as all of you have. We're getting comments. There's additional edits we'll be making and then looking for the feedback from the planning board and the CED with the hope that we can come back on February 6th for approval. I will share that every week now, there are communities that are complying with the MBTA legislation. This is going to put us in good stead to be well ahead of the December 24 date. But certainly, welcome any feedback that any of you have with respect to what the form-based code looks like. As I think I said at the last meeting, the best example I have on how this will work is what we have seen in terms of a change with the Perkins Foundry project. After 2.5 years of that kind of laboring through the approval process, we were able to work with that developer to redesign that building, make some compromises with respect to the amount of commercial space. And I think what they're proposing now is a really good project. I expect that it's going to get preliminary approval tomorrow night at the planning board meeting. It's just an example of how this process would work. If a developer comes in, and there'll be a checklist that we are finalizing now, that if all of the criteria are met on the checklist, then it's eligible for the expedited approval. If the checklist isn't complete, then they're not eligible for that. And a developer is not required to adhere to the form-based code. They can go the old-fashioned process through the planning board if they want, but we think that for those underdeveloped sites, that a developer is very much interested in taking advantage of the form-based code.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Director Rulli?
Just being referred out to me.
Great, thank you very much. I would entertain a motion to refer to planning board and CED.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
So this will come back to us for discussion as well, or for final approval or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I would just make a comment. I'm excited to see this move forward.
Right.
I am sponsoring this. I think all of us are eager to see action in the downtown area. And this is a great way to make sure that our interests are aligned with the developers. So this is appreciated. So with that, we have a motion and a second. We'll do this through a voice vote. All those in favor of referring to planning board and CED, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The motion passes. So that was item N. We took that out of order. We'll now go back to the agenda to item H, presentations. We do not have a presentation this evening.
Eric, could I make a motion to take item JA out of order?
Yep, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second to take item JA, that's the Townhouse Restoration Committee update, out of order. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. All right, we will welcome Marilee Hunt to the podium to provide the council with an update on the Townhouse Restoration Committee.
Thank you. Is this on? Oh,
It
sounds
is,
like
yeah.
it's on. Marilee Kenny Hunt, I'm speaking tonight as the chair of the Townhouse Reuse Committee, as your town clerk, and also as a citizen of Bridgewater. All three probably equally important, but the number one being that I'm a citizen of the town of Bridgewater. I wanted to give you a brief history. Uh-oh. Start at the beginning. There you go. There you go. There's the beginning. And you have it on both screens so you can see it. Okay. I wanted to give you a brief history of how I ended up here tonight. Near the end of 2021, Town Manager Dutton asked me to chair a committee for the reuse of the old town hall. I was quite hesitant to accept it. I did not feel that I had the skills or the qualifications necessary, but he patiently encouraged me and said I had vision. I had the vision necessary. So I accepted, and then immediately wrote a grant to the Mass Historic Commission to replace the roof on the building, which was falling off in chunks and pieces. And also called an architect, Michael called an architect he knew who wasn't available. I called an architect, historic preservationist architect that I knew from working on the building committee for this building, Joe Booth, and he was available to help advise us about what to do with the roof. We received that grant and the architect was hired and the roof is now replaced over there with the gutters and the downspouts and other parts, that insulation, that sort of thing that needed to happen in the attic. Right after that, I called on some people I knew, and I believed and still believe that they have at least as much vision and capacity as I do. And we've formed an ad hoc committee to work on the restoration of the townhouse. As soon as they were on board, I introduced them to the Jocelyn findings recommendation for the building reuse, a study that had been commissioned by the town through, I believe, a Mass Cultural Council grant. Is that true? Yes. And that team has served steadfastly through. You'll see their names at the end of the presentation. Thus, we're beginning tonight's presentation to look at the pieces that were foundational in our guidance for reuse. So you'll see here, this is these are some of the points from the study that was done, that the old town hall will require significant use, work to be usable as a public gathering space, a cultural center, a retail learning and performance spaces. That was part of what the report had recommended. The Bridgewater residents strongly favor repurposing it as a cultural center. And that was from a survey. They did a townwide survey that they did for the report, that 70% of the residents agree or strongly agree to have it used as a cultural center. And I will note that in Vision to Reality, when they've done the look at what citizens are saying, citizens really want business and they want culture downtown. So that seems to resonate now, even though this took place in 2020, it seems to be continuing to resonate. The most viable model is for the town to own and lease to a nonprofit for the building and outdoor use. So in other words, the town becomes the landlord, responsible for the building, maintenance, and utilities, and a nonprofit becomes responsible for the operations within the building. We have a next slide. So since Michael valued vision, I think vision is always helpful. I wanted to start by giving you the committee's vision, at least one of the visions that we have for what we could see over there in the townhouse when we get reuse going. So we know from when we did the 2009 and 10 redo of the exterior of the building, which is why it looks so nice, which is why it deceives you and makes you think that it's all set to go inside, which it's not. We learned back then from the Architectural Access Board that they were never going to permit us to use the front entrance as the real entrance to that building when it became occupied and made ready for reuse. So I've put here an old picture of the townhouse when it had the structure that was used to dry the hoses for the fire station, to give you an idea of what it might look like to have an elevator at the back of that building with the entry on School Street, which will, once the fire station is gone, School Street will basically be a boulevard. It's a huge, large street, and you could have parking on either side of it and an entry to the townhouse from that side with what is the back door now, the kind of handicap accessible. And as we envision it, it could even have a glass elevator. It could be a glassed-in entry and even a glass elevator. It could take people all the way to the second floor. I'd like to see it go all the way to the third floor where nobody would get off, but everybody could see a beautiful, beautiful visual of downtown Bridgewater, which is gorgeous when you see it from the roof of the townhouse. So turn my page, and I think we go to, this is our vision for the interior on the second floor, the top floor, to retain the original high ceilings. I was just looking at this medallion and asking Carlton if the one over there is about the same size. It's maybe even a little larger or the same size as this one that needs to be restored, to restore the siding and the curved top pocket door that leads into the large room that used to be the town meeting room. It's a huge room that's been divided into 3 or 4 rooms right now. We would plan on opening all that back into one large space that could be used as as almost anything you want to do. We have no venue in Bridgewater to date, so this could be used as a large venue for weddings or receptions of any sort. But we would also look to put the same kind of mobile walls that you have in a hotel, so you can make smaller rooms off of it and make the stage a little, there's a stage in there now, make the stage a little larger for performances and events, and even having roller tables and roller chairs so that you could arrange it and have an audience looking at a performance, or you could have smaller rooms with smaller events happening in them. So you could even have a movie theater and a theater and many other uses for that room. So then we go to the first floor to ensure sufficient rooms for various activities. So this would perhaps even be keeping the same room sizes that are there now, depending on what an architect is going to tell us about whether those rooms are stable and whether that configuration should or could be kept. We talk about having things like crafting, photography, pottery, the sales of crafts that are made there, kids coming in and writing their own books after school, and a little publishing house to help them publish them and sell them or give them as presents to their parents and aunts and uncles. Music lessons, practicing various types of music, a meditation center with yoga, reflection center, other culturally appropriate activities, and keeping one small room there for the nonprofit that will be overseeing the use of the building and finding all these creative things to be in it. The fact that we had a cultural council grant to help us determine the reuse gives us best prospects for getting cultural council grant money to help restore and reuse the building. So next slide. And the basement. Remove the old heating system, the pressure tanks, and other currently stored but useless items down there. There's a ton of room down there. A lot of it, most of it, just needs to be thrown away. We need to ensure the mold removal. We need to make sure the walls and floors are sealed to ensure that they can be cleaned and stay clean and that dry. And that the building can become energy efficient with heating and cooling. Certainly, if we're going to look for grants, making it a green building is going to be an important piece of the task. And when it's all done, if you can envision it, which is hard with looking at it now, but it has sufficient storage for numerous mechanical, landscaping, and other items, not just to store the music alley equipment that's there, but to store other things that may need storage for the town. Next slide. So then we'll move from vision now back to the report that started us down this path and kind of guides us. So the economic impact analysis showed that the old town hall as a cultural center can be an economic driver for the downtown. I've been curious why this hasn't been part of Vision to Reality, but I haven't heard anything mentioned about the townhouse with it. But certainly in this study with $2020, they were projecting it to be worth about $1 million a year in income. Maybe not all to the town because it might be going to the nonprofit that's setting it up, but they're going to be renting from the town. Next slide. To quote from the study, the old town hall combined with an outdoor plaza behind the building or combined with a new joint venture in another building where the fire station is with a developer. Or the second part is more what our committee has looked at. A phased approach was suggested with the old townhouse as phase one, getting it all up and going, followed by perhaps a plaza and then a new building when the fire station is gone. Next one. So talking about what we've done since we started, and I'm going to start back with when we left. We left there, I believe it was August of 2016, to come to the Academy building, and we left a lot over there. We were told that everything in the new building would be paperless, and we were supposed to leave files and records in the townhouse. So I know my office spent the last year before we moved having many of our things recorded and made lists of them and filed them in boxes where we knew that we could find them easily to leave in one of the rooms upstairs in the townhouse. But you can see then that things were brought from other storage units around town and brought in there. And you can see, I believe that picture right there is of some planning plans and CED documents that right now the Community and Economic Development, when they're asked, can't go and find documents that they need because they're not accessible over at the townhouse where they're currently stored. From 2019 to 20, Louise Stevens of Epstein Jocelyn Architects prepared the study that we're talking about with recommendations for adaptive reuse. And her, cost estimates follow. The preparation for reuse, again, these are in 2020 dollars, would be $450,000. An amphitheater, that would be the outside part, would be $607,500. But a new building on the fire station parcel would be $2 million. And did I say 4 million at the beginning, or did I say 400,000? 4 million at the beginning. And that the estimated total cost would be $6,682,500. 2020 dollars. So I have no idea what those are right now. So in July of 2019, the clerk's office sent an employee over there for 3 weeks to sort building plans. Building plans, the rolled up building plans. There were just hundreds of building plans there that were not marked or documented, or nobody knew what they were or where they belonged. So putting on a hazmat suit because we were worried about mold and it was summertime, one of our employees went over there and spent 3 weeks sorting out the building plans. And oftentimes with building plans, there's one main plan that is signed. That's the one you need to keep. There are sometimes, I've signed them myself, sometimes 14 extra plans that are just around that go to different departments and all of that sort of thing. So she sorted out all the plans that were there at the time that she was there and put the ones that were signed in one pile and the rest of them for recycling or disposal. We don't know what the outcome of that was. The signed plans were tracked on the assistant town manager's computer, but now when we look at it, there are plans kind of scattered all over the townhouse, and we don't know whatever happened to that 3 weeks of work that was spent. In 2020, the Mass Cultural Council grant application was submitted and a grant awarded for the cultural use of the townhouse. That's the one that did the report. So I'm just kind of going more in chronological order, even though you've been there and back already. In October of 21, the Belfour report was done by the archivist at, that's what I was going to say. I'm pointing to the public library. Yes, the archivist at the public library did the Belfour report, which was an inspection report of the document restoration. So we're really talking about how to restore all the documents that are stored over there. And then in December of that year, our ad hoc townhouse reuse committee was formed. In 2022, January, the public library archivist made her own report out of the other report showing Old Town Hall Records progress report. In March, An architect was contacted to support the Mass Historic Commission grant application for the roof. In June, the Mass Historic Commission awarded the townhouse roof grant. I'm going back over some of the things I said to you before, but it's just putting it in chronological order. In August, the historic architect was hired and the roof restoration began at an estimated cost of $277,497, and the town council was generously, was gratefully generous in helping supply the money that the grant did not supply. In October, the CPA funded a grant that helped match some of the money from the grant. And in December, the townhouse restoration contract was awarded. In March 223, the townhouse roof restoration began. In June, the damaged Parthenon frieze casts were sent out for restoration. I think you're aware of that. That was brought before you, and I was grateful for your support on that. And then we began interviewing town employees to try to identify where their documents were located, what they needed to do to get to them, what needed to be kept, and what could be disposed of. In mid-July, the roof and gutter in Piedmont and cornices and insulation were completed. In July, the second floor documents were moved in anticipation of shredding and recycling. In August, the town clerk met with each department to determine the location of their documents. We had long charts to decide where everything was and what needed to be legally kept and what could be disposed of, what could be disposed of by just recycling, and what could be needed to be disposed of by shredding because it might have confidential information in it. September, the Belfour Townhouse inventory was used to develop a triage sheet. This, I will explain, by this time, by August, we had a woman named Chelsea who worked at BSU as an archivist. And I discovered her when I took all of the town reports that we had digitized since 1847 to current. And we didn't have room, Bridgewater Town didn't have room to put them on our website. So I went over to ask the library if they could put them on the website so people could access those digitized records. They were thrilled to do that for us, which is great. And while I was there, I met Chelsea, who was new over at the BSU library and had done building cleanouts of the type that we're talking about before. She very enthusiastically offered to come help us clean out the townhouse. I was concerned about that, having a non-employee in there doing work with the stairs and all that sort of thing. The university generously offered to pay her for some hours every week to come help us clean out the townhouse. And we were very excited about that. So this is where we're starting to talk about getting permission from the town manager to start removing documents and removing things and getting things really cleaned out over there. That was in September. By October, the BSU archivist and the town clerk and others had consolidated several boxes on the second floor into 2 rooms. Those were the first ones that were going to be shredded or recycled. The town manager marked file cabinets and some documents for disposal, and Kilroy Brothers arrived one day and took out some file cabinets and many things on the first floor, opening up the foyer entrance, and I believe some of the things from the second floor. Well, I wasn't really informed about that, so I don't really know exactly what was taken at that time. In October, Chelsea sent another request to the town manager, a request for, quote, as many archival boxes as you purchased for this project, saying that she needed them as soon as possible because we wanted to put the documents that needed to be saved into the archival box to move them hopefully over to the memorial building so we could start to get things out of the townhouse so we could start to think about working on the townhouse. This is a picture of some of the storage areas or some of the areas at the townhouse. You can see the 2 with the orange arrows. Those are community and economic development files that are over there that they can't approach or use. Some of the rest are some of the boxes that we had moved out, hopefully ready to shred. In the second from the right at the top, those are some of the, no, over, one more over, yeah. Those are some of the planning documents, the rolls of plans and everything that we don't know. And some of those are also on top of the file cabinets in the one down below. So you can see that it's kind of a challenging area to be in. In November, we were hoping to get going on triaging and shredding and moving and storing. And the BSU archivist left before she could get started and moved to UMass Dartmouth. So she is no longer here. So those 3 or 4 months that she was available, we didn't get much of anything cleaned out at the townhouse. The things that Michael went over and marked and were taken by Kilroy Brothers. But other than that, we didn't get much cleaned out. So what we need immediately, and we would like your support in this, are archival boxes to store and save the documents so that we can move them out of the townhouse, even if they can't really be preserved as you want them to be preserved for the long range. Now we'd like to at least get started so we can start to work on the building and have somebody worry about the documents sometime later. But we do not want to destroy anything that legally is required to be kept. We need a shredder to destroy documents with social security numbers or other personal information. We need a bin or a dumpster. I have thought perhaps like the recycle dumpster that we use here at this office, the big green rollable dumpsters that we keep down in the copy room, so that we could put recycle items in that and have the university come and pick those up and take them away as they do for all the recycling in this building. So that's that, what we need immediately. And the critical needs to enable the building reuse are finishing the document triage, which I just mentioned, eliminating basement water infiltration. There's a picture of a wet spot that was on the floor one of the recent times that we were over there. Clear the basement and remove the former fire alarm equipment, the oil tanks and the large safes. There are several large safes. I guess we don't, oh yes, in the first picture there is one of the safes. There are probably 6 to 8 of those safes throughout the townhouse. And then design and install a new heating, cooling system to preserve the building. The parallel steps to that are to prepare accessible entrance designs for the school street entrance and to submit grants for upgrades. And to engage an architect just to find out what it is that we need over there. I mean, certainly neither I nor anyone on our committee has those kind of qualifications. So the critical need is to enable building reuse. There are bunches of potential funding sources. Not one of them is going to do the whole amount, but you can try to do some. The thing about funding sources and grants is you have to know when to write them. It takes you a while to write them. It takes them a while to process them, and they don't always come right away. So what do we need to do? How do we need to be prepared? If we get a grant, there's usually a time limit on how long you have to spend it. So you don't want to write for it too early before you can use it, but you also don't want to not be able to use it when you get it. So we need to address conditions, the load-bearing evaluation for modern building codes. We don't know what that is. Heating and cooling, single pipe steam heating system was built in the 1800s. It probably isn't green efficient right now, I'm guessing. And there's no central alarm system or sprinklers in the building currently. So I did want you to know, lest anyone's thinking, let's just let the building sit and fall down and let's not do anything with it. Since the 1990s to now, the town has invested over $1 million in trying to keep that building going. So we should think of that too. We've made quite an investment there, and the community is looking for us to make more. So what will the townhouse reuse? Will the townhouse reuse be a town council priority? That's what I'm asking you tonight. I would like you to make it a town council priority. I need someone other than our 5-person committee to prioritize it. And I thank you for your consideration. There are our committee members, with a special thanks to Carlton Hunt, who helped put the PowerPoint together. And then part of this was part presentation and part discussion. So I'd like to put up some discussion questions for you to have you let me know what you think. I'd like to hear from you. So you can pick and choose when and how will the townhouse reuse be included in downtown revitalization. I haven't heard it mentioned at any of the vision to reality sessions. Will, and if so when will the townhouse's potential economic impact be considered in downtown revitalization? When will the townhouse be included in the town's capital improvement plan? There's nothing in the capital improvement plan for the townhouse. And your thoughts on grant opportunities. Which ones should we consider? And when is it reasonable to apply? And does the town council find the townhouse reuse a worthy cause? So those are things I'd like to hear back from you if I could.
Thank you for the presentation. So maybe before we answer those questions, I think there are some clarifying questions maybe from the council.
Sure.
I'd like to open it up if any of the councilors have.
Absolutely.
Councilor Gallagher?
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for that presentation. I think there's no question that for the past several years, certain things have come through the council to support the efforts of cleaning it up, making the outside look good. And we did that several years ago, and most recently the roof. Now, I know I've seen in the capital plan, and I'll ask the town manager a couple of questions in a moment. I know in the capital plan, I don't know what year or what line it's in, there is some monies in there for digitization of the documents that are being stored in the town hall. I know I've seen that. I don't know where it is now in the so-called pecking order, when it's going to come to us for approval. But I do think that this council and prior councils has made the use of the town hall, the old town hall or townhouse, now it's being referred to, a priority when funding has come to us to do something with the restoration of it. It's an important piece of this town's history. It's an important asset to our town. And I do think the resolution that we voted on, sponsored by Councilor Perry, about the downtown revitalization may not specifically name that building, but it's part of the overall downtown revitalization efforts.
Could you
So-
tell me in what way? In what way is it
Language.
part of it?
In the language.
In language, but not in action?
Well, I think, as I've said, that there is nothing that's come before the council that we have denied. Everything that's come to the council for renovations and upkeep have been approved. We had a presentation about maybe 2 years ago from a member of the Cultural Council who is working, I believe where it stands right now is a Cultural Council through the town manager's office is trying to seek grants to make that Cultural Council a cultural use of at least the first floor of the building. And I've also seen in the capital plan at some point, in some line item, and I don't know what year, monies to digitize and take care of the files that are in the basement. So through you, Mr. President, to the town manager, I mean, am I wrong? Or I guess I could ask the town manager, you know, what is the process, the status of those two areas? And I guess the third question that we all have is, you know, what are the plans for that townhouse? I mean, we, as a council, we have been told time and time, it's hard for us to dictate to the town manager certain aspects of town buildings. But these, you know, these types of renovation things cost money. We can control the purse strings. Once we approve the money, we can't get in the way on how the town manager allocates it or even decides on how to spend it, but as long as it's done for that purpose. That's my understanding. So I asked the town manager what is the status? I think.
That's a great question. Counselor Gallagher brings up a good point. We have allocated, and council has actually already voted the first in what will be a 3-year process. So you've already voted, I don't have the number in front of me, but roughly $200,000 to begin the digitization process. We have, we had a archivist employed at the library. We're very, very excited to get the project started with the archivist. The archivist went on to greener pastures, unfortunately, and we've been trying to search for another archivist to fill that void. It's critically important, I think, as town clerk has mentioned, it's critically important that people that know what they're doing do the archiving and do the digitization, or at least oversee it, if not actually do it. So that position is open. So anybody that is interested and qualified as an archivist, please feel free to reach out. So we do have money allocated for that. We also have submitted 2 requests to the federal government for earmarks. It's not called earmarks anymore. Can't remember what it's called, but we've also looked for $2 million to $3 million from our legislative offices. Am I confident that we will see that money? No, but at least it gets us on the radar on a federal level. So those are 2 things we've got going on right now. We also, and I can't find it in the most recent capital plan, but I know we have a figure that we're carrying for that building. It's a huge figure. In fact, I think it's last time I looked, it was a $10 million figure. That's not something we're going to fund next year, and probably not the year after until we get comprehensive plans in place and we get the use and agreements. If we decide that we're going to go with Bridgewater State University as a partner, until we get those agreements signed and in place. And then we can begin to look earnestly for grant funding through state and federal agencies. But that's kind of where we stand now.
A time frame as to when at least the digitization or the clean out is there a time frame for that? I know there were many other aspects of the presentation, but a lot of it was say, let's clean it up, right? So, I mean, I'd like to see, I don't know how long it's going to take, 5, 10 years. I hope not, but
Digitization, excuse me, digitization isn't necessary to get it cleaned out. What we need are boxes to put documents in and places to put them to get the building cleaned out,
that might
that,
be part of,
and they can always be digitized sometime later.
that's part of the appropriation, the whole, including the digitization. So
Maybe.
I guess what's the time frame for that then?
Honestly, as soon as we can find a qualified archivist to join our library staff, that's going to be, that is really one of their primary jobs is spearheading this project. So as soon as we can find somebody, we're plowing ahead.
You're looking for a full-time position to do that, for ongoing projects
And
too? Oh.
For ongoing projects, and also, those are qualities that we can bring to the library as well. So yeah.
Counselor Robbins?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Hunt, and especially to the committee as well, and everyone who contributed. Clearly, a lot of work has gone into this. So this was really helpful to get this update tonight. I have a few questions, so bear with me. Can we go back to that slide, or maybe if you can just refresh? There was a $6.6 million number. Was that basically
Not there.
how
Carlton.
much?
I think it's way
Oh, no,
back
it's,
at
yeah,
the
it's way
beginning.
earlier.
I think it's way back at the beginning.
It's like the third slide.
2020.
Was that basically the estimated cost to be able to refurbish?
That was the 2020 cost of,
Based on the plan.
Based on the plan,
Then it was put together.
right? So,
no, not this.
so we know that number would be higher today if we re-estimated everything. Are
That's,
we,
there's there it is.
yeah. So, would we be thinking this would be, and this is just for my education or others as well, how would that get funded? So grants, et cetera, a hodgepodge of things. It looked like we came up very short of 6.6 based on some of the items that you listed. So who would fund that? And how would that get funded?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm happy as a former state and federal grant writer and grant funder to help do things like that. But those are things that we showed a list of potential grants there that could be looked for. If it's in the capital plan, we couldn't find it. I looked for it in the capital plan. I couldn't find it in the capital plan. So it's going to have to be a combination of something. And perhaps if BSU wants to be a partner with it, that's never been mentioned to us as a committee. But then we haven't received a lot of input.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that right now is just a placeholder
Yeah.
estimate and we don't
This
know
was
how-
from this was from the
Okay.
study,
Yeah.
the grant funded study from 2019 and 20. And so that is in 2020
Right.
figures, which are lower than today's figures.
And then the $1 million in projected revenue, that
Pardon?
the $1 million in projected revenue, that would be potential revenue generated by a potential nonprofit that would be running whatever. this
Yes,
community
yeah,
center
for whatever,
was.
if you had people going there and taking music lessons, people going and taking cooking lessons, kids going there after school for something, or if you had pottery being made there and sold there, whatever a nonprofit might find to fill the spaces there.
Just a general piece of feedback that felt very ambitious for an annual revenue target, even for a for-profit business that was fully locked and loaded and ready to go regardless.
I don't know how they calculated it.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that we calculated. That was also something from the study.
Okay. And is there, and I get it because the community specifically said, hey, we'd love to have arts and, this community center aspect. Was there any consideration or discussion around if it wasn't a community center, if it did need to be able to be more of a profit center or a commercial type of enterprise?
So business, is that what you're thinking of, or?
I was
Did I
just
think
wondering
of
if that was ever
housing
part
or-
of the conversation.
Our committee hasn't specifically looked at anything except cultural things because the study was done with a cultural council grant. And so, of course, they're interested in having it be a cultural center of some sort. And they would probably be a good resource for more grant funds. I mean, they definitely are a good resource for more grant funds once they've funded the feasibility study. So that's kind of why it is tilted to that direction. That doesn't mean it has to be, but like you're indicating, there has to be a way to find the money to
Gotcha.
do it for whatever.
Okay,
I'd
I mean, that
also-
makes sense for the committee's charter to basically be like, yes, if this is a community center, that's what we focus on. My last question, and it's actually not for you, would probably be more so for the town manager or Mr. Rulli. I don't know if he's still here. And I'm not saying I'm advocating for this. I'm just saying we have a building here that is problematic and requires $6.6 million plus to be able to refurnish it. There is a possibility, there's a possibility it may not be feasible to make it a community center eventually, because somebody's got to pay for that. And with everything else that we've got going on in this town, so I just, in saying, as we think of alternatives, is this a possibility as we think about the need for meeting this requirement around 1401 units for the downtown revitalization? Is it possible that this building could eventually be an option for housing units, and is it close enough?
Good question. I think any building is a possibility for potential housing units. My guess is that sort of iconic picture of that building probably would not be something that residents would want to see as housing. See it as something. Use. But again, right. Nothing is off the table in those terms.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mary Lee.
Thank you.
Counselor Lindy?
So piggybacking off of Council Robinson's comments, first of all, I want to thank Merrily and the committee for all the work that's been done so far, and there's plenty more to do. I think I figured out while you were talking about maybe a possibility of paying part of that. If the fire station property were to be an expansion building, that could possibly be the for-profit part, where the front building would be the cultural part. Just a thought. But my question on the archivist, through you to the town manager, is does that archivist at the library have to have the library science degrees, or is it more an archival position? Because archivists are easier to get than MLS candidates. And I'm just wondering, because I know a gentleman who worked for the state, retired, who was the architect for the Mass Commonwealth, and he would know people like that. So what,
It would require an MLS. Yeah.
okay, maybe he knows that
If
both, but
as I say, we are open. We've had a few applicants and none of them have worked out, but
yeah, it makes a lot of sense, because it sounds like a lot of this stuff seems to be predicated on that. And some of it's just a basic clean out to me and a move, but to where, I don't know where the space is. I mean, does the memorial building have space for storage?
no, just to give you a sense of the process, and I may be getting it wrong slightly, but documents that are required to be kept in some form or another, whether that's digital form or paper form, regardless, all of it will be digitized. So and eventually everybody will have access to it. So if you're a resident, you should be able to have access to, within reason, certain property files. You figure out where your septic system is on your property. If at 2 a.m. you're worried about, your septic overflowing and you want to know where it is on your property, you should be able to go and figure out where that is. So the documents, the vast majority of documents over there are things that are required to be kept. As I say, some of them can be kept either in a digital format or a paper format. We're going to do all of it, digitize all of it, so it's as accessible as we can possibly make it. And that's what requires an archivist's expertise in order to do that. But ultimately, once they're digitized, once they're identified as documents that we can then throw out or shred, excuse me, at that point, they go to where either permanent storage, and that that won't be in Bridgewater. That'll be Iron Mountain or whatever storage facility that we end up getting. And then the basement of the memorial building is designed as a workspace for digitizing documents, and then short-term storage of documents that are either waiting to be digitized or waiting to be shipped off for permanent storage or shredded.
And just to follow up to that, so the college archivist left, the town archivist left. The college does have a lot of space. And if we're going to partner with them, we keep talking about truly partnering with them. Is it possible that while we're waiting for all of this, maybe the college could help us out and store some of that stuff? I'm just thinking out loud.
We can have that discussion with them. My guess is that, when it comes to documents, a lot of these documents actually have been disposed of with the state archivist's approval, because they're infiltrated with all kinds of mold. So for 100 years, whatever they've been there, obviously they haven't been cared for in the best manner. So I'm guessing, given the BSU's own issues with mold in the Maxwell Library, that they'd be very hesitant to take on our potentially moldy documents. But that's a good question, and worth that asking. So I appreciate that. Definitely worth asking.
Could I just add in too? It isn't a matter of just the documents that need to be saved. There are documents that need to be found and saved. There's a lot over there that just needs to be thrown out. A lot. And so I'm not sure that it requires a great deal of skill to figure out what some of those things are. Like I said, we already did it with the plans, but we don't know what happened with that. So we don't know if the plans that we're looking at scattered around all over there now are the plans that were to be saved or the plans that were to be thrown out or whatever happened to it. So it's just something consistent needs to happen. And Michael did a great job getting a bunch of file cabinets out of there. You can actually get into the vestibule now. You can get into that first little room. The treasurer's office has said to me, they don't want to keep anything. They don't need anything that's over there. They want all their documents thrown out. They have to be shredded because they have social security numbers in them. So get a shredder and just shred them. That doesn't take a lot of expertise to do that. The expertise is figuring out after you've opened a box what to keep in it and what to get rid of. And some of it doesn't necessarily require an archivist's expertise. It could be the person who works in that office here in this building that can say, yes, I need those documents, because we all have retention schedules. All of us, every department has its own retention schedules, and we know what documents we need to keep and what documents we can get rid of, and when we can get rid of them in 7 years, when we can get rid of them in 10 years, when we have to keep them in perpetuity. So every department knows that and can help with that if we can just figure out where to put the things that we have to keep and where there's a dumpster and where there's a shredder to get moving on getting it gone.
Just one final question. The building is not heated or cooled, correct? And also, there is still mold in the building? Is it hazardous to be in that building?
No,
No.
no.
Thanks. Counselor George, and then
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Mrs. Hunt. First, thank you very much for the presentation, as everyone else has said. I am firmly a supporter for shoring up the building, both from cleaning as well as structural. I know we've addressed some things and probably more to address, cleaning things out, archiving, I think all that. Where I have a little bit, I don't want to say of a concern, but probably of a little bit of a mindset is with the long-term plan I noticed on there, and I think Council Lindy and Council Robinson pointed out, you've got on there building on the old fire station. We haven't landed on what is going to happen
Right.
with that when it comes down.
Right.
Personally, my focus and my concern is that we're spending a lot of time on looking at Broad Street and we're losing focus on Central Square. I firmly believe personally that in order for us to revitalize Central Square, we've got to eliminate the parking in Central Square that causes safety problems for pedestrians as well as cars. But if you're going to move that if you're going to eliminate that parking, you have to have it somewhere else. I know that the fire station footprint wouldn't be maybe, space for space, but it could be an alternative to be able to help with the expansion of the walkways within Central Square. So even though I appreciate the long-term vision, I wouldn't be really in support of going down that path until we, as a town, figure out what we want to do in Central Square and how to get that accomplished. So it doesn't mean that we have to sit and wait to do things in the townhouse, but from a long-term perspective, I think we have to have a lot more conversations on what Central Square is going to look like, what we're going to do, and in order for us to do it, what it entails in regards to leveraging assets that we currently have, as well as assets that we may have to acquire. So that I'm just giving that more as feedback as anything else.
thank you, Counselor George. Dr. Perry?
Thank you. And again, thank you for the presentation, Mrs. Hunt. To that same vein as what Mr. George was saying, I mean, again, the Downtown Revitalization Committee is looking at the whole thing. The townhouse is the center jewel of the downtown there. That's very much part of the revitalization of the downtown. And it is going to definitely take time and some steps. We do need to figure out what the best long-term plan for downtown. We're basically just tackling traffic patterns and traffic flow through there right now. But, part of what we're going to look at too is, we've got to move the fire station out of there. What are we doing with the old fire station? Ultimately, we're probably tearing it down. Do we want to build an addition onto the back of the townhouse? Do we want to make it parking? Thoughts of a parking garage, maybe? All different directions that we can go in. But the study's been done. It's going to give us some direction. The work that your committee has done is going to give us some direction. So, the town council and the subcommittee is definitely, very much in favor of making the townhouse a center jewel of the downtown, and the partnerships either with BSU or a private corporation, a business to come in and do the revitalization on the inside. These are all things to be vetted out through the council and through the subcommittee. So it's all going to come together. It's going to take some time. Obviously, I think we do have a little time to deal with the paperwork that is within the building, because we can not exactly in a position to go forward and make any major renovations on the inside part of this building right now. So I think everything is trending as quickly as it can go. The funding sources all have to be vetted out. There's a lot of work to be done on there, but all the work that your committee has done, as well as the study committee, is going to allow the council to go in the direction it needs to go with this property, as well as the work done by the subcommittee on there. So it's going to happen. It's going to be the jewel, like I said, of the downtown. And I just have to, show a little patience and time to vet it all out.
Councilor George basically said everything I wanted to say, but I do want to thank you for the presentation in the Culture Council. I'm for the building being used. I mean, we've already put over $1 million with the CPA into it, and it's a shame if the building doesn't get used at some point. I do have 2 questions on the building itself. It has been insulated recently, right?
The
No.
building has been insulated?
Just the roof
Or
has
just
been
this,
done?
just the roof,
Yeah.
under the roof?
Right, because with no heat or anything, no insulation in that building is definitely an issue.
We don't know what's in the walls. When I say, maybe keep the existing rooms downstairs.
Yeah.
We don't know what's
What's behind it now.
underneath the
Yeah,
walls
I'm
and all
just-
that sort of stuff.
I can
That's why I
tell you
say
an
we
old
need an
building like that
architect.
is definitely not
Yeah.
good with the old insulation that was probably in there still to this day, and that's gonna cause pipes to burst and more damage over time. And how long do you think those documents go back? All the
Excuse me,
documents that have been lost, is that over 100 years of paperwork, 20 years? What are we looking
I
at?
don't have
there?
any, I really don't know.
Yeah,
I really don't know. You look at all the transitions.
Hmm.
I mean, first of all, there was this building,
and
had all sorts of things in it, right? It had to shut down completely. Everything was all scooped out, taken out, thrown in storage bins and given every place.
Hmm.
And the memorial building was used. Then the memorial building was shut down. Then the townhouse was shut down. Then we all came back here to Beauty and a wonderful place, but not a lot of space to store documents.
Hmm.
So I'm not pointing any fingers.
Yeah.
I'm saying like this happens. We live in an old town that had old buildings that weren't always being kept up
to date, yeah, no, I get that.
really well, and stuff like that just happens. So now it just happens that we have a lot of old stuff
Yeah.
stored from various places that's now over there.
Mhm.
And it kind of exhausts you just to look at it
Oh,
and to
yeah.
try to
Those
think
pictures
about
right
where
there
you're gonna
alone.
move it and put it. So I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm just saying if we don't move sometime,
Yeah.
we may not move anytime.
Mhm.
And as far as digitizing the documents, we don't necessarily need to digitize them right away. We need to get them put someplace where they're going to be safe and out of the way. And somebody can digitize them as they get around to it, as they get the money for it, as they get the equipment for it, as they get the people to do it. But the study that was done, that the archivist referred to, had said it was going to take, let me try to get these numbers right, 4 people, 3 people, 22 years. No, it was 22 years. I think it was 3 or 4 people, 22 years working working a 5-hour or, a 35-hour week
Yeah.
to get the job done. I don't think that has to be true. I don't really know how they got that in the study. It's a pretty daunting
No,
figure
right.
to think about. But I don't know that that has to be true. I think there are things, like I said, the treasurer's office wants everything thrown out. Throw out is easy.
Mhm.
Throw out is easy. You get rid of a bunch of things and you can get rid of a whole bunch more metal cabinets. That leaves you more space. Then you've got more floor space. Then you can maybe try to work with more things. I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's simple. I don't think it's simplistic. But I do think it needs to be a focus
Yeah.
and needs to happen.
Do we have any other questions?
Thank you.
I just have one more thing. Picking up on Dr. Perry's comments, also the ad hoc committee is going to be meeting on a monthly basis now.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to help move things in the right direction. And hopefully we can work with Bob Ruley and figure out where it fits in the downtown revitalization as well.
Yeah, I think that's good. I actually do have maybe a few questions. I
Oh,
think
sure.
maybe starting with an observation. I think it seems like there are actually two separate projects here. There's one is we have old documents. How do we make sure that we don't lose the ones that we legally need to keep? And then the second is we have an important building, historical building, and how do we make sure that we preserve it and revitalize it, bring it back into like the heart of the community. And so I think you asked about priority. So for me, priority is two things. It's important, but it's also urgent. And if those two things come together, then it's a priority. And so I think both of the things we heard about tonight are important. The urgency thing is the one that I'm actually wondering about. So I think I heard on the documents, and correct me, although it's not ideal and you might have to step over boxes to get to things, we're not entirely sure what's there. I'm not sure I understand the urgency of fixing that problem this year versus next year, for example. I think with the roof fixed, we don't have water leaking in there anymore. So maybe it is a stable environment. Agree, not ideal. Digital would be better. Cabinets where we could find things easily would certainly be better. But I'm trying to figure out is what we have good enough for right now. And then the second thing is on the building purpose itself. I'm also trying to figure out the urgency that there as well. I think when I first heard about this a few years ago, I actually did look at it as the heart of the downtown. And if you look at a lot of other successful downtown revitalization efforts, they take a building like this and it attracts people day after day with something new, and everything around it benefits from that business. So that's what I had in my mind. So 2 years ago, if you asked me the urgency, I would say absolutely it's the number one thing we have to do because it's going to make everything else better. I think with the latest sort of view on revitalizing and maybe building a heart and also competing cultural activities elsewhere in the downtown area. For example, you might have a music venue at the Town River Landing. You might have pottery businesses now that are competing against a nonprofit. I wonder if the intended use actually still fits with the new plan. And so I think I would be more comfortable letting it go through the process and actually factoring in the new ideas and say, do the old ideas still make sense? Do we still want this to be the cultural center, or is it actually going to compete with development elsewhere? And is there potentially another use for it? And I like the idea of parking, behind it as well. So I think for me, it is important. It's a 10 in importance. We have to figure out what the plan is. We have to make sure we do something with documents. I would actually say it's not urgent for me. And I think because I don't see it as urgent, because I think the documents, we can kind of live with it for a little while. I think we have to get the full picture right. And I don't know, I really don't know how this fits into the full picture. The same question you asked, we're asking too. Do we need it? Is it the heart of it? Or is it an important historical thing that we need to preserve for history? we have to figure that out. So I don't see it as a priority right now. And I would maybe, if I translate that into the dollars, if I have $1 to spend right now and I can pick between fixing the bathrooms at the school, archiving the documents, fixing the roads, it is important, but it doesn't have the urgency of some of our other priorities for me right now. And I think for me, that the whole idea of us having a strategy to make Bridgewater ready for the next generation is a little bit about picking what we're going to do and make sure we're picking the right things, but it's mostly about picking what we won't do and being comfortable saying it's important but not urgent and it needs to wait so that these other things that are more important can move through. So just my perspective, one of many, but that's with the assumption that the documents are okay and it's a stable state and that, you know, the process that we're going through will eventually tell us.
The documents are definitely not okay and not in a stable state. Community and economic development can't go in and use any of their documents. When people call them the documents that they're supposed to have in perpetuity, they can't get them.
They can't find them, or they physically can't get
They
to them.
can you go back to that one picture, Carlton?
Yeah, again,
They are stacked up with file cabinets on either side of them. And Nicole won't even go over there and try to look for a document because it's impossible. There's one right
yeah,
there.
and that's
Like
where
that,
I
that's
think
where they're stored.
that's where
their
I'm aligned on the
documents.
importance. Absolutely, I think the importance is there. I think, and if it isn't stable, then we have to, I think, accelerate that project. The archiving and document handling one makes sense to me. But I think we need to really pressure test, you know, is it inconvenient or is it unacceptable? And if it's unacceptable, then it's a priority. If it's inconvenient, we have a few other unacceptable things that need to stand in front of it. So that's where I'm at. But I do appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I do value the building. I think it's an important part of our history. I want to see it come back to life. I want to see it, you know, kind of be the heart and pride of what we do. I just have to make sure we balance that against some of the other things, you know, that might ultimately give us the revenue that we could pour into a $6 million building down the line.
I'll just remind people, like when we did the exterior of the building, remember in 2009, 2010, it was such a joy to watch people who had been walking around town like this were walking around town like this, beaming. They were beaming and they were excited. And because the building still looks good outside, you don't see that now. I mean, it's been 13 years. And so it's like, we're just used to it now. But I think having something done for your town sometimes can lift a whole lot of feelings. And I know it's expensive. I know it is. And I know you have a lot of things you have to balance. So I do truly believe that. But I also think when people call and they need their building plans because they're planning on doing something else and their building plans aren't available or accessible anymore, and they can't move forward with whatever they want to do with their property because we don't have the documents that we should have.
Yeah, that's a priority. And then that
Those are
becomes
those are difficult things. We have a copy of the PowerPoint that we'll give to each one of you, a hard copy if you want. We'll pass it out before we leave. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time. Any additional discussion from the council? Okay. Again, thank you very much for the discussion and the presentation. I think we could follow up maybe with adding to the town manager's report just a status on the document archiving part of that for next meeting, if we could. And then if there are other counselors would like to introduce other discussions there, feel free. Okay. That concludes item J, which we took out of order. I'll move back to item I, town manager's report. Parking issue at train station.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. President. So first item on my update is, as you say, the parking issues at the MBTA station, just adjacent to the BSU campus. As many residents, I think, know, and as some of the counselors know, because they experienced it, there was a bit of a parking crisis several weeks ago at the MBTA stop. And that That seemed to cause quite a debacle. We reached out to BSU. Let me preface by saying we knew nothing about, we don't have any advanced knowledge of what Bridgewater State does with their parking. We don't have any advanced knowledge of what the MBTA does with their parking. It's nice when we get informed, and we appreciate that, but there's no requirement that we have an approval process or be notified of what they do there. That said, we did get notification that parking all of a sudden was almost impossible. I think some of us in this room actually missed trains, and were quite aggravated about that because there was no parking down there. So we reached out to BSU, we reached out to MBTA, we reached out to Keolis, who operates the commuter rail line for the MBTA. Keolis had no information, and our MBTA contact in Boston did not have any additional information at all. BSU, however, did let us know that they had been discussing the possibility of leasing spaces in the MBTA lot for overflow student parking. And evidently, they had observed over a period of months a number of empty spaces in the MBTA lot, and thought, okay, maybe we can lease some of these spaces from the MBTA to relieve some of the parking pressure on students, or at least the perceived parking pressure on students. So they struck an agreement to lease a little over 130 spaces. Those spaces would be planned out to be clearly marked, and the students would know exactly which spaces they could use, which of the spaces they couldn't. That program was slated to begin this month after winter break, so students could come back, and they would be informed that there would be parking availability in that lot, presumably on a first come, first served basis for those specific parking spaces. Unfortunately, as they sometimes do, students caught wind of that agreement and thought that meant that there was carte blanche to park there anywhere, anytime, and hence they flooded that MBTA lot with their own cars, regardless of which spaces. And needless to say, that caused a bit of havoc. After the first few days of that miscommunication, BSU was writing tickets to students parked in the MBTA lot. They issued multiple notifications to students, and they did apologize through my office to the council for causing that bit of a debacle. I think things have calmed down a little bit. Obviously, students are not there right now and not in session. When they come back, I think BSU intends to very carefully enforce the parking for the I think it's 136 or 138 spaces. And they plan on stationing their own police department down there for the first few days back to make sure that that their students stay within the marked parking spaces. So all of that said, this issue does happen to coincide with an increase in ridership generally on the commuter rail lines throughout the eastern part of the state. We're not quite at where we were before pre-pandemic, but we're getting closer and closer to pre-pandemic ridership levels. So we will be, my office will be looking very carefully at the MBTA parking versus what now will be at least temporarily student parking, because I think will be if it comes to pass that there are not enough spaces for the MBTA commuters, will be quite forceful in with both MBTA and BSU about eliminating student use of those parking spaces. Again, though, we don't really have we have a bully pulpit. We don't necessarily have a formal ability to influence how either the MBTA or BSU uses their parking lots. So, but it is an issue. Obviously, it was a huge issue for those commuters who were missing trains and couldn't find parking spaces. But I know that we will keep track, and BSU did extend their apologies because it was not something that was supposed to happen until later this month. So, but I'm happy to answer questions to the extent I know.
Council McKinnon,
Go first. That's fine.
Council George.
Thank you, through you to the town manager. So, Mr. Dutton, we pay the MBTA to have a train station, correct?
We do pay an assessment.
Okay, so we pay an assessment. Let's put it into terms. We are the lessee, the MBTA is the lessor. How is it that the MBTA can release parking spots that we pay for every year?
That's a good way to put it.
I think it's
I
the
will
only way
use,
to put
I
it.
will use that argument, certainly.
And I don't
if
think
it
it's a
comes to
bully
it.
pulpit. I think it's something, and I don't know, Mr. Rollins, I'm not going to put you on the spot, that if we really wanted to push the avenue on that, the university should have never gotten permission without the MBTA coming to us first. And we have the right to say no. That's going to cause all types of problems in a couple of weeks.
Mm.
So I would really like at the next meeting to have a follow-up on this with a conversation with the MBTA, and more importantly, putting them on notice that they're not allowed, unless they can show us otherwise, that they can sublease those parking spots when we've already paid for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Council George. Council McKinnon.
It's a really good point right there by Mr. George. So if we move the Spring Street parking lot, what's the college gonna do then?
If, I mean, you're talking about the
If we
move of
take it,
the actual
that's,
station.
that's
So
556 parking
So
spots right there.
the Spring Street lot and versus the current MBTA lot, there's about I think it's about a 60 some odd lot, parking space difference. And so BSU has been very clear that they don't, you know, they're more than happy to have the train move off their campus, but they just don't want to be shorted parking spaces
Yeah.
that are you know, precious to them. So that's part of a long discussion about, you know, the whole platform move generally. But
See, my biggest thing with moving the train station is you don't have all the kids crossing over 104 because it becomes a mess over there. They just run right out in front of you and all that. We could go on, but I'm not gonna. But I definitely don't think that once we get that parking lot back, because it was ours before I was even born, it was ours and we gave it up to them. And I think that was probably one of our bigger mistakes because that's not a commuter school. No one goes on the train to go to school. I have friends that live in Brockton, they drive right down.
Yeah.
You know, no one uses a train to get there. So I really don't think, if they're trying to take advantage of us now, I don't think they should be using the parking lot in the future. I don't. But that's about it for me.
point taken. Point taken.
Thank you, Council McKinnon. Any additional questions? Okay, we'll move on to item B, fire station update.
So the fire station, good news, there's good news, then there's not good news. The good news is that the low bid was submitted by M. O'Connor. M. O'Connor is the general contractor that did this building. By all accounts, they did a very good job with a challenging project, but they did a very good job. The bad news is that the total construction bid came in at $21,400,000. Sounds good, but when you couple that with the soft costs, architect, OPM, and so forth, that comes in substantially above the 23 million that we appropriated and that the voters approved. So that is, there is a funding gap. So we're working on trying to close that gap with a compilation of a whole bunch of different monies, ARPA funds, specific grant funding opportunities to fund things such as technology, which is certainly not an insignificant expense. Originally, as you know, we estimated the $23 million appropriation would fund both the Station 1, the headquarters, and also improvements to midlife improvements to Station 2. That looks like now looks as if all of the appropriation will be required for the headquarters, and we would have to fund the Station 2 improvements as part of our annual capital appropriation and tackle specific pieces each year instead of doing, you know, the complete mid-year update. And obviously, it's no secret about escalating construction costs post-COVID. And the inflation that building projects have seen there. So it's not shocking. What is confusing is, excuse me, what is confusing to folks is that it sounds as if it came in below our appropriation, but as I say, when you couple it with the soft costs, it did not. So we have several choices. And I can tell you that the project team has suggested that we plow ahead. If we didn't choose to plow ahead and go forward with the project, we'd, one, be delaying the project. We would have to scale back the design and or go back to voters and ask for more money. My opinion has been that we are not going back to voters to ask for more money. And I think the rest of the project team feels the same way. We don't want to delay the project because inevitably that will end up increasing the construction costs again. Although I will tell you that that the appropriation or the total construction, the reason this is confusing, the construction cost actually came in $1 million less than the most recent cost estimate. So we commissioned a couple of different cost estimates along the way. The very first one we did said $23 million will cover your new building and it'll cover the construction midlife renovations to the Station 2. The most recent one we did was showed that we'd be about a $5 million delta between what we voted and what it was going to cost. So it ended up being about a $4 million delta, which is good news, but it's not good news. So, so my recommendation would be to plow ahead. We do have a plan in place, tentative plan in place, and we'll be looking for our OPM to give us the very specific numbers. And once I get the very specific numbers, I'll forward all of that to the counselors for your review. But I think we'll be looking at grant possibilities or opportunities and additional funding opportunities through state and local, state and federal government. But ultimately, I think if we delay, we have a much smaller project and a higher cost anyway. So, so that's sort of where we stand. I will have some of those I better have some of those numbers this week. And as soon as I get them, I'll forward them along. So.
Questions? Yep, Counselor Lindy. And
Yes, through you to the town manager. I believe we may have saved some dollars on the Mitchell project. Is any of that available for this purpose?
That would be great, but unfortunately, no. No, once the voters vote a specific project, then we have to stay within, those specific projects. If, I mean, I'm trying to think of an example where you could use some of the untapped debt exclusion. It would really have to be associated with that property. If they decided they had to build something got forgotten in the plan and they had to build an outbuilding to store, equipment or something, that would arguably be okay. But once the project is voted, you really have to stick within that project.
So we just saved money on that project.
But
We didn't
in
spend-
fairness, our message to voters was that, we saved a substantial amount of money that was voted and approved for the Mitchell School. And so voting for the fire station, knowing that we saved that money was a much easier ask for voters because, the tax rate wasn't going to be impacted as much as we had initially thought. So,
Thank you.
Counselor McKinnon.
All right. So I was going to do my homework before I came here, but if you can't tell by my attire, I had a longer day than I expected. Any updates on the bill up in Boston? I know Walter Timothy was supporting it, and is there any way we can get money out of that for that?
As is the case, I think with a lot of bills, that's gotten a fair number of co-sponsors,
Mhm.
but is stuck.
Yeah.
So it hasn't gone anywhere. But Senator Timothy's been very supportive. So, so if there's an opportunity for some sort of alternate funding, and quite honestly, it's a tough call. We've been told, don't look to Beacon Hill for any kind of funding outside the normal, grant cycles that are run through the administration. And so we've been kind of forewarned. But that's certainly not going to stop us from getting up there and turning over the leaves, so to speak.
We definitely need to get this off the ground, though. When we vote for this, 2022 or 2021? Because it was in 2023.
The vote
Right,
was in
'cause
22, I think.
I did do homework on a subject, but I couldn't even stop at my house. I had a whole list of other towns. I don't remember them all, but Norfolk, they voted for it in January. They broke ground in May. Or maybe it was even March. I don't remember. It was one of the two, but we really need to get going here. Like the guys said that were here that day, November and December, construction prices have started to go down.
Yep.
We need to take advantage of this before it goes back up. I mean, like I've said before, this world's pretty messed up place. One person sneezes wrong, every price can go up again. You know, so we really do need to get up on our feet. And I mean, if I was on the chair of the Public Safety Committee, I would have set up a meeting for all of us to talk, because this is a little ludicrous. I know there's some problems with the property we've dealt with, but I mean, if you want to build on what some people call a pond, you might want to do it in the winter and start clearing it up. You know, it'd be a lot easier, and we just need to break ground there. It's been too long already. This should have been a 3 to 4 year project, and we're almost 2 years in and we haven't even broke ground. So
That's, I tend to agree with you, and I think the project team also tends to agree with you. Let's just go for it and do it.
I mean, I know we're over budget too, but you're pretty good with your budgeting, and we usually get 10 to 11 in free cash at the end of the year. You still can pay into pensions, but I really think we should take that money to cover the extra, so the citizens don't have to worry about any extra coming out of their bank.
I think the project team would agree with you. I don't think, you know, free cash is essentially what funds everything else.
Yeah.
You know, all of our capital roads,
Yeah.
to some extent roads, and all of our other capital needs. So, but I think, you know, I think we'll figure this out one way or another, not without a lot of work, and quick work. So we have,
It'd be good as many grants as we can get, but I really do think we should dip into that to just get it done, get it settled, and we move on. I mean, the amount of times I say that road's been like that since I was in high school, I think we can wait another year so we can get a new fire station on that side of town, because it is needed. You get all these new apartments, access and all that, and then what if the fire department needs to go over, or the police department needs to go over to Nick and Angelo's? You know, we're not equally spread out like we should be
Sure.
at all.
true.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of that piece of property, just because I know, God forbid, they need to get out at 4 or 5 o'clock. It's gonna be a hellhole, but it needs to happen. This needs to get on the move.
So we have another couple of weeks in order to either accept or reject the bid. So within the next couple of weeks, we will have our homework done.
Mhm.
We'll get there one way or the other.
No, I get that. It's just the bid date was in November and we're in January now, you know, so.
That's all that's required. So there's certain required.
Oh, I know there's a
timelines.
process.
So,
It's
yeah.
just.
Yeah.
I did do bonding construction before, so I've done jobs like this, and like I said, this shouldn't be more than a 4-year project. And we're already 2 years in. But
We'll
that's
get
it for
there.
me on the fire station. Thank you.
All right, I think we have two other questions. Dr. Perry
Sure.
first.
Again, just to ask, are we potentially looking at the way things are going to potentially start clearing maybe in early spring? Just to kind of give people an idea when we might see some action there locally.
Yes, I think once we execute a contract, then the contractor would be in, but before, well, nothing is frozen at this point, but would want to get in there and grub and do the tree removals that are necessary prior to leaves coming out.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Counselor Murphy.
Yeah, through you to the town manager, Mr. Dutton, is there an expiration date for those bids?
So there is, so they're good for 60 days. So we've got about another 3 weeks, something like that.
And would we have to find that funding source before we accept those bids?
That's what you employ me to do. So I have to find the funding source prior to me being able to sign a contract. Absolutely.
And if we reject the bids, what would be the next step?
If we reject the bids, as a practical matter, we'd go back to the architect. We'd ask the architect to reduce the scope of the project, whatever that might mean. And we'd commission another cost estimate. to make sure that we're not going back out to bid only to get, comparable bids for a reduced facility. And then, presuming the cost estimates came in, then we'd rebid the project and we'd go through that whole process again with no guarantee that it would come in any less than it already has.
And just my last question, if you could you quickly summarize what the delay was from the town vote to why we
So-
haven't broken ground?
We were, there were a number of things. We had issues associated with the property that we had to clear up, and those took an awful long time. No fault of ours, but those took quite a bit of time. And I think the COVID certainly, I'm not going to blame everything on COVID because we kept going, and we kept going pretty well. But I think COVID played some role in some of that delay. But mostly it was clarifying and resolving the property issues that we had to address.
Thank you.
Thanks. And then just last question for me. I just want to make sure I understand it. So I think you said the construction cost actually came in lower than our last estimate, but the reason we're over is that the soft costs came in higher. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, when you do a public construction project, you go to voters, obviously, and you're asking voters for an amount of money. So you want to make sure that what you're asking voters for is something that is justified by a cost estimate. So the cost estimate we did way back, 2019, 2020, showed a total cost for all of both projects, basically total cost of $23 million. Fast forward to a couple of months ago, we commissioned another cost estimate just to see where we were. That cost estimate said in total, we were about $5 million under the amount of money that we were going to need. So when we got the bid in, it calculated out for both projects, it calculated out to be about $4 million short of what we needed. So I think the miscommunication or the misinterpretation of a lot of people, understandably, was like, oh, it came in under budget. Well, it didn't come in under budget. It came in under our last estimate. It came in about $4 million over budget. So that, if that explains it.
It does. Thank you. Any additional questions?
Just one more
Yep,
quick
Councilor McKinnon.
What fire station is 2? Is that Pratttown or is that Center? When we're
Sorry?
talking Fire Station 2, when you're talking about 1 and 2, what's
Fire
what's the other one we're going to put money into? Is what I'm
Pratttown.
asking. Pratttown. All
Yeah,
right.
Pratttown needs some paving work. It needs HVAC
back,
work.
yeah.
It's, midlife
Yeah.
stuff.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, we'll move on to item C. Quick update on the sale of 330 Bedford Street.
Very quick. I have no additional information on that one. So generally, just so counselors know and the public knows, we don't usually get any kind of advanced knowledge about potential property sale. This particular, I don't think it was 330. So
333, I think it is.
it's on the other side of the road. Yeah, 333.
The old auto body place. Yeah.
To function. So we did, the only reason that we knew that there was potentially a bidder, or not a bidder, a purchaser in the works, or that a transfer of the property was in the works, was that we had a visit, the building inspector had a visit from somebody who professed to be in the process of buying it and presumably wanted to know more details about what he could do with it or so forth. So I don't have any additional information. I don't believe, according to our assessors, they don't have any notification that it had changed hands. That's the only notification we actually get is after a project changes hands. But we haven't gotten any informal notification or formal as yet on that one.
Okay, thanks. Do we have any questions on that one? Okay, appreciate the clarification. Apologies to 330 Bedford Street. Moving on to item D, Stiles and Hart Park update.
We're about to go out to bid in a couple weeks, and work will commence immediately on the acceptance of the bid. So
great.
Good news on that one.
Any additional questions on that one? Okay, we'll move on to item E, wastewater for the prison?
So I think it's probably a misnomer there on the agenda. So it's not wastewater for the prison. It's the potential for us to be able to divert some of our wastewater to the prison sewer facility for treatment. We have had discussions with the DOC regarding the future use of their plant, which is located obviously on their DOC complex up there. They are amenable to possibly opening their plant to our flow or a portion of our flow. Obviously, this is all to create more capacity for us to be able to treat, whatever additional flows that we would need. The only drawback they pointed out to me many times, is their plant needs very significant upgrade in order to meet EPA and DEP discharge requirements. And essentially, it's exactly the same things that we're doing to our sewer plant renovation right now, they need to do to theirs. So that they're still waiting on funding for. So they have as much of a hard time getting funding from the state as we do. So is what it is. So, but we are continuing that conversation and we'll stay actively involved in those discussions with their engineers. That's who we talk to on the use of DOC property. So the CED has gotten updated flow numbers from the sewer department, so we can have very specific conversations about, what kind of flow we would be asking to divert there. And it's actually, even though it'll be a long process, it's actually helpful for us to begin this conversation now so that when they do upgrade the plant, they can upgrade it to a standard that will accept a certain amount of flow, X amount of flow coming from us. So that's where we stand. That will be a lengthy process, but one that absolutely I think will be beneficial to us in the long run.
Great, thank you. Councilor Lindy?
Just an observation, maybe they can use the money that they cut us from the DOC appropriation to get that upgrade done.
I
Right,
think,
thank you.
that it would take about 400 years worth of that money to, but point well taken.
All right, Councilor McKinnon? So through you to the town manager, do they use it now? It's underused, right?
It is currently being used
Yeah.
for the whatever population they're housing up there.
Mhm.
It's
But
underused though.
But it's
currently.
not up to EPA regulations and all that?
No.
That's a surprise, huh?
No. Well, if it's interesting to me, probably no one else, but DEP and EPA created, they adopted much lower discharge thresholds specifically for nitrogen and phosphorus. All of the plants that discharge into the Town River or the Matfield or Taunton River have all had to upgrade. So Middleborough, I think, was the first that had their permit come up, and they spent a lot of money upgrading their plant. Obviously, we're spending a lot of money to upgrade our plant. And so right down the watershed or right down the river, everybody is going to have to either has had to or is in the process of creating or rebuilding their plants or changing their technology. And so I find it kind of ironic that the state agency, the only state agency that's contributing to that discharge into the river is the one agency or the one entity along the river that has an order that they have to abide by, but hasn't done anything yet because the same state that's forcing them, that's creating the reduction in the discharge allowances is not funding its own upgrade. So these are the things I find funny.
No, I got a little kick out of you just saying that. Is our phase one done over across from
No,
Hooper
no.
Street, whatever that is?
No,
No, it's not.
No. We've got another
No, this,
number of months
this,
to
like you
go.
just said, this would be very beneficial for the town, especially if we're gonna do all this stuff uptown. I know we want to act like our infrastructure is great, but we're pretty tapped out here.
Yeah,
And,
no, we need more sewer capacity. We need obviously more water.
I mean, Middleborough themselves, they're putting millions of dollars right now into their water too, like we need to look into on Vernon Street, like we've talked to a few times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's it for me, but thank you.
Thanks, Councilor McKinnon. Dr. Perry?
Yeah, yes, thank you. Again, as just mentioned, they're not, expanding the prison down there. They're downsizing. So are we going to basically need legislative help from our representation of this area with the state to potentially get something to happen in regards to that? Because without it, I don't see anything going to be changing with their sewer system based on the size and capacity that they're doing with the prison right now.
So I think ultimately we certainly will need, help from our legislative delegation. I think the one thing that we find, and this sort of bears out, I think, is that, if we do a lot of work at the staff level with the state, we socialize an idea with this at the staff level. We have discussions about, what we're looking for, how we can help them. Quite honestly, they need the flow. They need additional flow in order to maintain a viable plant. So they understand that. So if there's a way for our needs to be met by diverting some wastewater to their plant and their needs being met by accepting that flow, then on a staff level, if we can get some agreement there, that's helpful to them. And quite frankly, it's for the DOC, and we haven't had this specific discussion, but it's a benefit to create there's some cash flow created, right? There's some revenue created for the DOC by allowing people to tie in, and however that works, whether it's, whether the town bills the customer and then the town pays the DOC, or that's all for future discussions. But there is a benefit to the DOC to do this as well, and they have to upgrade the plant. So having those discussions on the staff level and then taking that to the legislative delegation, saying, look, we've worked with the administration, we've worked with the DOC, and we've come up with this plan that's going to help us accomplish what we want to accomplish on a downtown revitalization sense. And it also helps the DOC accomplish what they need to accomplish just on a pure wastewater treatment side. It makes it much easier for the legislative delegation to buy in and convince their peers that this is a good thing. And then go forward if there are votes required or whatever, or funding required. It's something that then everybody can agree to, and easier. It's an easier sell.
But we would need someone to sponsor that, to get the ball rolling on that first and foremost.
Eventually, yeah. I think it's probably premature at this point, to dive into the deep end on that. But I think once we come up with the bones of an idea or the bones of an agreement with the DOC, then absolutely.
So that's step one.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
And Council Robinson?
Thank you, through you to town manager. Thank you for the update. Bear with me, I think I might have a question in here. As I think about this update, which is very helpful, although concerning, to learn about, they're still waiting on funding. Who knows how long that might take? It kind of brings me back to, I think, some of the discussion we've had around this downtown revitalization plan and looking at those big contingencies, moving the MBTA station, wastewater, redirection. Those are, roadway things. Those are very large contingencies. And so I guess maybe one of the questions I have is, how are we kind of capturing what the strategic plan around all this looks like? Kind of goes back to my question around showing all those different, in traditional project management, there's like stage gates, right? So it's like, you can't get to the next step without getting through this stage. So trying to get our heads wrapped around, like, what does that look like? And, so that we're working towards those, and then sort of like, what are those contingency plans on those big contingencies, right? So that's one aspect. And then I think the other thing too is, what is the plan for when we truly really get stuck? I mean, if we're looking at something where that's going to take them 5 to 7 years, I have no idea. You know what I mean? So it's like, how long does it take to get the funding? And then like, how long would it take to actually upgrade so that we could do a redirection? Do we lose interested developers at that point? Is it something that we can't even approach developers, knowing that we've got these large contingencies? So like I said, I apologize. I'm like, there's a couple questions in there, but I think it is a matter of trying to, I'm still struggling. I'm going to be very candid. I'm still struggling with kind of understanding, we've had all this excitement. We're still very much committed and excited. But at the same time, I also am kind of struggling, like, what's that concrete plan look like? And then the other piece is sort of understanding what are the steps that we take around some of these contingencies if we're really hitting walls.
And what I might suggest is maybe what we could do is put that on the agenda for the next meeting and maybe have Mr. Rulli come in and maybe share that with us. What are the contingencies he's tracking? What are the timelines around those? What are the fallback plans if we don't get them? I think that would be great to know. Would you be comfortable with putting it on the next agenda to get an answer?
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Okay.
Because, as we think about one of the things that we have said here in this forum and that we've said publicly as well is like, oh, we're not paying for all of this, developers will. Well, we need to make sure that we've cleared as many hurdles as possible for it to be as attractive as possible, right? Because it will be very costly to invest in this town. So hence why it's like, I want to make sure that we've got all those pieces buttoned up.
Yeah, great
Thank
point.
you.
Yeah, great question. Thanks. Any additional questions on wastewater to the prison? All right, seeing none, we can move on to F, recreational marijuana sales update.
That one is also fairly easy to answer. Obviously, several people have asked what the financial impact has been to the town and what the revenues have been for the tax on recreational sales. The simple answer is it's too early to know. The more detailed answer is that since the approval in Bridgewater, the one existing firm interested in recreational sales has been waiting for approval from the Cannabis Commission. So they were hoping, my last conversation with them, they were hoping to be on the Cannabis Commission agenda in December, and they told me they didn't make the December meeting, so they were hoping for the January meeting. Presuming that they're approved by the Cannabis Commission, then it would be about a month to 2 months for them to start up. So they haven't even started up yet. They're just waiting. They've done some prep work, but not, I don't think a lot of prep work pending their approval. So there's zero income at this point. Once they get up and going, presumably within the next couple of months, then we'll get a better gauge of long-term what that's going to be.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any questions for the town manager?
Not on that.
Not on that. Okay. So that'll close out the town manager's report. Do we have additional questions for the town manager?
My item
Agenda items?
My item did not make it on here that I asked about last meeting. I wanted an update for what's going on with the veterans.
Oh, yes.
Apologies for
So
that.
if we could do that for next
We
meeting.
will.
Thanks.
Mr. President. Also for the next meeting, I see that we approved business on Water Street. Can we get an update on the tire situation on
Yes.
Water Street? Thank you.
And Council Murphy?
I have a request for the next agenda item, and this may be getting ahead of things a little bit, but there's a migrant housing crisis in Massachusetts right now, and I'm sure we've all seen it on the news. I was just wondering if you could, if the town manager could give an update on how that's impacted Bridgewater, if it has at all. And then any potential conversations or plans that we've had as a town or to plan for a situation like that.
Thank you. All right, so we have an update on, yep,
I just want to request an update on Winter Street. The extension there between 18 and Conant. I know we talked about doing that. I know it needs drainage. I've been talking to a few people online. They're at the point where they'll give up their land if they just get a dry front yard. I'd like to know how many different properties, though, that street goes through, because I know it's more than one.
Yeah.
And just like to get that updated and what the town's doing, if they've talked to anyone, and what's the plan on attacking that? Because, yeah, we need to do the drainage over, but that's not that big of a street. And that definitely is one of the worst streets we have in town, especially when you get to the bend at the end. That's it for me. Thank you.
Any additional items for the town manager for next week? Okay. That concludes item J. We already took item I. That concludes item I. We took J out of order. It brings us to K, committee reports. Do we have anyone who'd like to offer a committee report? All right, I see none. We'll move on to item L, legislation for action. We have 3 items this evening. Item A is order O FY 24019. This is eminent domain order of taking for 2-lot parcel on Broad Street. Budget and Finance voted 2-0 to recommend at their 12/19 meeting, and the Finance Committee voted 6-0 to recommend at their 12/27 meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we can move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. I would just ask the counselors, because that passed, we have to sign some special pages. If you could just at the end of the meeting, come see me. We just need to collect signatures on that. The next item, item B, order O FY 24020, acceptance of a gift. Budget and Finance voted 2-0 to recommend at their 12/19/23 meeting. The Finance Committee voted 6-0 to recommend at their 12/27/23 meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Moving on to item C, order O FY 24021, contractual buyout. Budget and Finance voted 2-0 to recommend.
2-0 to recommend.
Great, thank you. And the Finance Committee voted 6-0 to recommend at their 12/27/23 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? I see none. We can move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Moving on to item M, old business. We have none. And new business we took out of order. So that brings us to item O, citizen comments. Would anyone from the public care to speak? I do not see anyone. Okay. We will close citizen comments and move on to agenda item P, council comments. We'll start with Councilor Lindy, please.
Oh, wow, I wasn't prepared for first. First of all,
Happy to move on.
no. Happy New Year to everybody. I think we had a very productive meeting tonight with a lot of excellent discussion, and I look forward to 2024.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Lindy. Councilor McKinnon.
Just also want to say Happy New Year, and hope everyone had a good holiday season and stay healthy during the flu season. And that's about it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Perry?
Yep, again, Happy New Year to everybody. As mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I want to personally extend condolences to the family of Bob Wood. His son Jimmy is a member of our Lions Club here in town, and family has been a longstanding contributor to the town of Bridgewater. So extend again condolences to Bob Wood's family. Other than that, just looking forward to a productive 2024 with this council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Robinson.
I'm just going to share one comment, actually as a follow-up to Counselor Murphy's request for an update about migrant families. I am aware that I believe it's 48 children are coming into the BR schools that have come from approved migrant families into our area. I had seen that one of our school committee members had really encouraged the community to really be conscious of this experience for these young kids and really think about words and how we talk about such a highly politically charged topic, because at the end of the day, these are still young people who have come not of their own, volition, but certainly with the spirit of finding a better life. Our community isn't always the most welcoming to those to immigrants, to people of color. and especially to young people. I've worked with a lot of young people in this community, and they have shared heartbreaking stories of this not always being the most welcoming. So I think especially in light of what's happening for these migrant children, again, words matter. What we say to our friends, to our family, to our own kids really, really matters. So I hope that folks will set a great example about being open and inclusive and welcoming. Other than that, Happy New Year. Looking forward to serving in another great year. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Robinson. Counselor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good meeting tonight. And I'm glad we had an in-depth discussion on the townhouse. And I'm glad we're going to keep that under the town manager report for an update. And, I am committed to, as long as I'm here, to see that restored so it's in use. Maybe not to the appropriations that we saw on the screen today, but to some extent. So we'll continue the discussion. It'll be on the agenda. I think that's a good thing to come to some conclusion as a council as to how we want that building to be in the years to come. Other than that, a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Counselor Gallagher. Counselor George.
Nothing tonight, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Counselor Murphy.
Yeah, just quickly echoing a few of the comments that were already made. Thank you to our town clerk and the committee for the presentation tonight and keeping that on the forefront. I think that's important. And a Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Counselor Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to be very brief, I would also echo thanks to Mayor Lee Hunt for her hard work and her great presentation this evening, aided by Carlton Hunt. Appreciate your help as well. It seems like old news already, and actually it is, but if you remember the storm that we endured just a couple of weeks ago, I just wanted to, for my part, say thank you to town personnel, to first responders, certainly to National Grid and all the other associated people who came and jumped into action in order to clear debris and tree limbs and help to restore power. And hopefully the coming storm, I'm sure you know about it, will be this weekend. Won't give us any repeat performance, but I thank you very much, and that is all.
Great, thank you. That leaves it with me. I'd like to echo the sentiment on Happy New Year. I'm excited for 2024. I think 2023 was a great year for preparing Bridgewater to start tackling some of these very big, important strategic initiatives. So I'm excited to see them make progress in a very visible way in 2024. I'd also just like to make a note that we are starting to enter the beginning of election season in Bridgewater. So if people are interested, the information is up on the Bridgewater website. The process starts by pulling papers that you can then get signed. There are a variety of opportunities to participate in town government this year. So I would encourage anyone who's interested to just do a quick search on elections on our website, and you'll see a full calendar of activities along with some supporting information on how it works. With that, I think we can close the meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you all.